Oh, good question.
One of these bullets is like us, traveling forwards through time. The other one's going backwards.
John David, Mr. Nolan always chooses not to tell us a lot of things in his movies. And that's very frustrating, intriguing, but fascinating at the same time. And in Tenet, it's not the exception. So, and one of the biggest questions is the name of your character, but actually his personality and his emotions are also a mystery for the audience. So did you create a persona for the protagonist?
Yeah, I did. The fact that he didn't have a name excited me because it means there's endless possibilities to who the guy is. We can literally build him from the ground up, from scratch. So that's what we did. We were able to create a character unlike any other. Genres like this tend to adhere or tend to suggest a certain way of having to be, which are all great. We all love. They're historic in that nature, but we also took the opportunity to create something new, and so all these emotions and everything that goes into it, was formed from a background in journaling and research.
Tenet. It'll open the right doors, some of the wrong ones too. Use it carefully.
Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thank you. I'm very excited to talk about this film with you. And the entire film for me is emotionally distant, We know so little about each character in Tenet, particularly the protagonist, but at the same time, Kat is the heart and soul of the movie, She carries all the emotions, and I think it's a great character, and you did a great job, for real. But how was that? How was being the only emotional character in a movie that is so big like Tenet?
It's an interesting question because I would say when I was in it, that's not how I felt necessarily. And I feel like what's interesting about this piece is it is such, although we follow protagonist and John David does such an incredible job, it is really an ensemble piece. Sort of every piece of the puzzle of each role complements, one can't exist without the other. So I think that what everybody is doing is their own note, in a way, like their own note of the piece of music. And so I understood what the note was I had to play, if you know what I mean. I understood that I had to bring that, and I understood that she grounds a certain emotional aspect of the film, and that and as an actor, that it was my job to do that and fulfill that. But I also feel like what I do in the movie wouldn't land if it wasn't supported by the other emotional kind of, because, for instance, without Ken's performance, which even though it's so kind of evil, is very emotional too. And so you wouldn't understand her if you didn't have him playing that in that way. So in a way, it's all kind of like threaded in. That's how I feel.
Why does it feel so strange?
You're not shooting the bullet. You're catching it.
Whoa.
I done went back in myself, felt like hell. Work, I risked it, pace yourself. How you living? Know you thrilling, office in it. How I got my stripes and pendants backing out in the street.
At the beginning of the film, the protagonist is like a normal person, but then his entropy is reversed and he can run backwards. But what about his emotions? The emotions run backwards too?
Oh, good question. Because it's funny you asked that, because that's something I constantly thought about, and if his emotions run backwards. I gotta say, I would answer it this way: the protagonist and the audience are one-to-one. So, there is a beginning, middle, and end in our perspective of watching it, but the movie's perspective is not necessarily so. Like the title, it's a palindrome. But if we are one-to-one with if we the audience are one-to-one with the protagonist, then our emotions are pretty linear because we're discovering what the protagonist discovers. But there's some stuff I don't want to give away that maybe the other versions of, maybe those emotions are running backwards. But because of where we are in relationship to the protagonist, I'd say it's probably the only thing that's linear in the film.
I mean, there is one sequence where I had to do something very emotional backwards. So, yeah. And that was like a very, very, luckily for me, I got to play it forwards a lot. So I knew exactly what the sound and feel of it was. But doing it backwards is a very, very bizarre experience. That in those moments of making the film, you really just have to look up at Chris and say, is that right? Because it feels so strange on the inside.
What do you think we're seeing?
The detritus of a coming war.
Okay, and well, of course, it's a very complex story, but at the end, it's a science fiction movie. And Mr. Nolan talks about a lot of things, you know, this entropy runs backwards, the end of the world, certain sense of responsibility, the human being as his own enemy. So I would like to know which is the very important lesson in Tenet for you.
Oh, very interesting. You know, in a way, I guess like I have two takeaways from it. The grandfather paradox is a really interesting idea that I've never really thought about until obviously I made this film. The idea of not wanting to alter anything and allowing what has happened to happen is sort of, I guess, my worldview without me knowing that was my worldview in a way. But I think the idea of posterity is a really interesting one, the idea of what we leave behind, and whether that's for your children and how you raise them into what sort of humans they become, or whether it's what we literally leave behind for the next generation. I think that for me is like the most important message of the film, really, especially with where we are today in 2020. It's very relevant that we really seriously think about that as a species.
You want to crash a plane, but not from the air. No, it's so dramatic. That part is a little dramatic.
So, well, that's weird because you have worked with Spike Lee, and that's a name in your list, and now it's Mr. Nolan. So, what's next for you? It's amazing. Your filmography, it's amazing.
Well, I thank you. I'm so blessed to be able to work with these juggernauts, really, these historical figures in cinema. So I'd like to keep that going if that's possible. You know, I mean, that's what my heart desires, to be able to work with people that love what they do the same way these gentlemen do, and have the approach of film and the love of film that I do. That is the goal. Maybe
you have to follow your instinct to your next and the next project, right?
As an actor, yes, I will definitely trust my instincts, indeed. So thank you.
Okay, that's all, John David. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You have a good day.
My pleasure. Thank you.